Je m'appelle Tammy Lee et je suis la co-fondatrice d'une compagnie qui s'appelle Culture Creates.
And what does Culture Create do?
Culture Creates accelerates the production of structured metadata for the cultural sector, performing arts and cultural sector.
And could you explain that exactly? What does that mean?
I think the problem is in the performing arts sector, it's sad to say, but the cultural sector is in many ways unaware and vulnerable. There's little to no machine-readable metadata available. So if you don't believe us, or believe me, you can ask Siri or Alexa or OK Google, and I'll know very little about, next to nothing about the performing arts. So we created Footlight to help technologies or bots like Siri, Alexa, and OK Google to know more about the performing arts. So the Footlight technology, essentially, we use sort of semantic computing techniques to translate websites into machine-readable code. So they can be findable on the web.
You're talking about websites that you convert with Footlight. You mean websites of companies?
Websites of arts organizations that have events. So we're focused on events first. To create a knowledge graph of event information around performing arts. The reason why we focus on event information is because it has the most impact for the arts organization itself. We ask the question, how do we use technology to get more people to the live event? And to do that, you need to be findable on the internet. And today, the way the web works, to be findable on the internet, you need to have a minimum of structured metadata in a very specific form in JSON-LD to be findable by the tools that you and I use every single day. Without even knowing it, we use our telephone to find things for us. So if a website of an arts organization is not structured in JSON-LD, when we ask our phone or conduct a search on our computer, performing arts events don't rise up to the top, or it can't be an answer for what we're searching for if we're not findable. So it's basic things. It's just the arts sector is not even findable because there's no machine-readable metadata available.
So essentially, your tool is for the vocal search?
Not just a vocal search, it's for all search, any chatbot, any sort of intelligent assistant. But it's the basic way the web is working. We are moving towards an AI-powered world and the race in an AI-powered world is an answer. So to be findable is no longer SEO, but answer engine optimization. So the basics that we need are shifting on the net, and the basics require machine-readable metadata or machine-readable code in the back end of our websites to be understood by whatever algorithm the AI-powered world is going to create.
So in this new world, new web world, how do you see your intervention regarding what Google, Facebook, and GAFA does?
The way we work is we work with the arts sector to develop this metadata. And I think when we work together with the arts sector, we do a way better job than Google or Amazon or Facebook or anyone else. They're interested in creating a knowledge graph and structuring metadata for the world. So they're just going to do a really quick pass over performing arts. I think we'll do a better job in creating linked, rich metadata set. We'll do a better job for ourselves than what Google will do for us, which is the minimal, which is,
What can you tell me about the linkage of data that is essential to navigate in this new world?
I think it's to have it. You need to have linked data, of which we don't, right? It's not enough to just to have structured data. It needs to be linked, because artificial intelligence wants to come up with an evaluated understanding. So it needs to have, you need to have you start with raw data that gets transformed into information, which is data in a very specific way, but that's still not enough. That's information that's enriched with semantics. So we need to create that semantic layer that AI can use to understand to understand what the arts and culture does, or understand its event, or understand the show, or understand that this is a play by Shakespeare, and Romeo and Juliet, this is a live performance that's happening in Stratford. Oh, but there's also Romeo and Juliet, the film by Franco Zeffirelli. When I say that, that dates me, because that's the Romeo and Juliet film I like, not the one with Leonardo DiCaprio, but the Zeffirelli one. But we understand that these are works that originate from the literature that was written by Shakespeare.
Yeah, I'd like you to talk to me about what you said when we were talking on the other side, the responsibility of the cultural sector to make the machines understand their environment.
I think in the world that we're going into right now, people are bending over backwards, investing hundreds and hundreds of $millions into new AI technology. For AI to work, it needs data. And the only data that's being created today is data that is commercially viable. Algorithms and the huge multinational companies, they're publicly traded companies. So they are attached to a business model to make money. So their algorithms are there to make them more money. Because all this data and these algorithms are focused on making money, there's kind of, a lack of data, different types of data being created that perhaps are really great for civil society, but not so good for the pocketbook of a shareholder or for the profitability of a shareholder. So I think the arts and culture sector and the government and civil society has a responsibility to create different types of data sets and give it access to AI that is just not based on profitability. It's a race to the bottom when we create data that's about, that's linked to profitability. It's about, what watch we want to buy, or what shoes, or e-commerce products. Very little about maybe how we spend our time. AI is in its infancy today. And if we just sort of let AI loose out onto YouTube, what is it going to learn about human beings? What it's going to learn about human beings is that we like cat videos. We play a lot of video games. We do a lot of online shopping. It doesn't have a rich set of data for it to train on, and that window is really small. I mean, AI is I'm for early childhood development, and I like to feed AI today, in its early days, a rich data set that includes the arts and culture sector, or the Canadian arts and culture sector. That's what drives us, actually. The big picture for us at Culture Creates is we need to teach AI. AI is learning about us, but we need to feed it information so it can learn about us. And the arts and culture sector has a responsibility to do that. The values of our society reflected via our cultural products or our cultural data that we can provide it.
Do you think the government should do something, and can they do something about that?
I don't think governments, they can try the best they can, as they should, to regulate and have policies to control the large multinational digital companies like the GAFA or the FANG that I call them. But they can only go so far. So they'll need to really look at ways and putting incentives in society and how to develop different types of algorithms that are not linked to profitability. So give us an option, give me an option of what type of algorithm that I want to use. I don't want to use the algorithm that's, about the most popular. I'm not interested in the YouTube algorithm. Maybe there's another algorithm where I want to see more diverse stuff, but that algorithm doesn't exist today. So what incentives as a society, and our governments have to show leadership in this, what incentives can they give us so those alternative types of platforms, algorithms can be developed for the benefit of society, not the benefit of the pocketbook of a shareholder? So we're in a sort of, I did not think I was going to be talking about this today. you know, we have to think is how is big business good for society in a digital world? We're not in the 20th century world where manufacturing was sort of the main way of, the industrialization of the economy was the main way how to generate wealth. We're building cars. People were working building cars. And when you really think about it as well, you know, there's a statistic, and I don't know where it came from, but Ford Motor Companies, at the peak of, you know, depression or the worst sort of economic year it had, still employed more employees than Google does today. You know, so the 20th century sort of capitalist model that we live in kind of works really differently in a digital world. You know, we have these huge concentrations of mega companies, digital mega companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon. And because they're using digital processes, they use very little labor. We got to rethink the distribution of wealth in society. We got to rethink how we're going to do that. And I'm for, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm for commerce. I'm for how does business help, you know, help the world. I think if we use it properly, it could be a way that we can motivate people and generate wealth for people, if we use it properly. So it's a huge problem that we're going to have to face, and metadata is sort of that tip of that iceberg. So if we can find a way to distribute metadata or leverage the use of metadata in a more fair way that is a little bit more equitable, I think that's a start. And it's an easier way to enter into, okay, well, let's rethink how we're working in society. So how we distribute metadata as a start like this is, I don't have an answer to any of this, but there's going to have to be an, you know, real serious thinking how we redistribute wealth generation societally moving forward. That's linked to metadata in an abstract sort of sideways way, but I think there's a way of managing metadata that is a little bit more fair and more equitable for everyone. And if we could do it there, then we can apply it elsewhere. Let's start with the easy stuff, public metadata. You know, play around with that and explore ideas on how we can, you know, sort of have collective governance over it. Does that make any sense? I am babbling, so babbling.
So babbling, but we have to get back to maybe to more practical things.
Yeah.
Your culture creates.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of the tool you use.
We call it Footlight.
Footlight. Can you tell us? Do you have concrete examples of how Footlight? Have you been using it?
Yes. So we have a beta version of Footlight. So Footlight is a suite of technologies that sort of collect data, structure it, and can republish it back on the website. We source our data from arts organization websites. We think that's the easiest way to source our data. So we collect it, scrape it. If it's not structured, we'll structure it, and then we'll give an opportunity for the arts organization to republish that structured metadata back on their website so they maintain authority of their own metadata. We also provide an opportunity for the arts organization to sort of validate it and check it. So we have a sort of a portal and metadata editor. And then we link all the metadata together into what we call an artsdata.ca, a national knowledge graph of event metadata for the arts. And so that's what Footlight does. And it automates the process. We do 90% of the work. So we don't think it's the job of the ballet company to understand what semantic web is, ontology, taxonomy. It'll scare them if we have to, you know what, can you guys all get together and use the same semantic standards? They're just going to run away the other direction. So we created Footlight sort of as an automatic tool where we do 90% of the work, but to have the best metadata, that 10% of work that's left needs to be done by the arts organizations themselves. So we take their website, we translate it into machine-readable code, then we retranslate it back into a human form so they can take a look at it. And it's just a really easy portal to, hi, this is what we found on you, this is what it looks like, this is what you look like on the internet. this is what your machine readable data that we have on you, and we just like you to take a look over it and just check. So we try to simplify that process without using any big words and just put all the complexity in the back end with our tool. And so to also accelerate the process of having critical mass of structured metadata for findability online in the cultural sector, focused on cultural events.
You're talking about findability. That's not
Yeah.
the same thing as discoverability.
Well, you can't have one without the other. I think you findability, I use the word findability. They're interchangeable, they're slightly different, but you can't even be, without machine readable code, you're not even findable. The way the web is going to work is going to be different. My son is 12. When he's an adult, he's not going to be visiting a website and clicking on a link. So the way we use websites right now, when we have this idea of funneling people to come visit me on my website, this is being upended really quickly. So our children, in the future, they're not going to be visiting a website and clicking on a website to go visit them. And we're an arts organization, or any organization can have control over the experience that you have when you visit their website. That's no longer the case. In this in an AI-powered world, it's going to be about the AI platform that's going to grab your information and serve it up. So your information is going to have to be parsable from your website. So we foresee a future. The reason why we get information off of an organization website, we see the website as a master repository of data. Not necessarily, in the future, the location where you go to have an experience with that arts organization. But that master data repository of information is so that the AI platform, they're going to battle it out. Whoever ends up being that AI platform, or multiple, or one, I don't know what that's going to look like. They'll be able to grab the information that you have and serve it up to the public. But that's the way the future is going. So your website becomes a place where people come and take the information and use it. So, which is not a bad thing. That's just the way that's just the way it's going to go. That's where we see the future heading. So if you have an old style website that's not machine readable, I think your visits are going to diminish over the long term. Or what's going to happen is maybe the visits will stay the same, but the human visits will become less and less. And there'll be more virtual visits by bots. And if you're not machine readable, they're not going to understand your page, so they won't have any information to take with them to wherever they're going or why, to answer whatever reason why they're visiting your page. So it's a little weird when I say this. Maybe you'll get more visits, but maybe they'll be all bots. That will increase for sure in the future. And if those bots can't understand what you're offering, that's just, you're not findable.
Do you have can you measure what you've been doing? Do you have performance indicators?
We're just new. We're using Google. We're too new to do that. But what we'd like to do as we move forward is we're using Google Console, and we're just trying to find the KPIs to measure, like visits on websites or findability. But it's a tough one. But we see this as a future, as what's going to be happening in the future. I mean, if you just ask, one test we do is like ask Siri. Ask Siri about the Captain Marvel movie right now. It's going to geolocate where we are and give us a list of cinemas and times. Ask Siri about Giselle Le Grand Ballet Canadien right now. I don't think will come back with nothing. But Giselle's coming up. It's a huge ballet of Montreal's biggest ballet company. So it's because we don't have, that findability. I know that Google's working on a new event finder that's rolled out in the US but not yet in Canada. They're always, figuring out new user experiences for events or for this or for that. Google Answer Box. So they have UX engineers on staff, probably a whole team of them working every single day figuring out how to create new user experiences for people who are using the Google search. So if we make our event information in the arts and cultural findable or structured, that means we get to leverage the work that Google's doing. which is not a bad thing. We should build that knowledge graph and the leverageability for ourselves. If we just use Google tools, we're building Google's knowledge graph for them. Just before we do that, I just like to build a knowledge graph for the arts sector, then share with Google, then leverage Google's UX team of who knows how many UX engineers they have in their team, but that's all they do all the time. We can't have that in the arts sector, that many UX engineers, nor do we have that in a ballet company, no matter how big that ballet company may be. National Ballet of Canada has no developers and no UX designers on their team. Their focus is to produce ballet. So Footlight was there to solve that problem for everyone in the sector, because I'm a career arts manager. I come from the arts, who decided to quit her cushy job and start a tech company. On paper, does not say entrepreneur anywhere. On paper, does not say metadata specialist or subject matter expert in creating knowledge graphs. But over the years, I have now become a subject matter expert on metadata and knowledge graphs. Who knew? I wouldn't have known, but that's what happened. Yeah.
So if Google come up with an event,
Event Finder.
Event Finder, they want to put you out of business. You will work with that, and
yes, because you want to use the tools that's out there. So you want to be sort of a device agnostic or software agnostic. So yeah, you want to use Google's Event Finder tool, or Google's going to provide that to us as individual users. So I want the art sector to be able to leverage it. So the reason why I think that they're kind of unaware and vulnerable is like they're unaware that Google is creating this new Event Finder sort of user experience. If we remain unaware, we miss out on those opportunities to be more discoverable, because we're not findable. Because right at the outset, we're not findable. So Google is creating discoverability tools all the time that we can't use if we're not findable. And when I say we, I mean the cultural sector. So Footlight, at a really basic level, when you think about the digital transformation of the cultural sector, that's a really big subject matter. That's kind of like, how do I do that? So for us at Culture Creates, we chunked it down to the smallest piece that we could think of, and the smallest, our starting point, because there are different small little pieces everywhere. Our starting point, the littlest piece that we can chunk, is like structured data. Oh, not just structured data, linked structured data. Oh, not just linked structured data, what kind of data we're talking about? Oh, we're going to do event metadata. So you chunk it down, the problem, to the little tiniest piece, and then you start building from there, building back up. So it starts with structured data. And if we don't have it, there will be no digital transformation in the arts sector. So, we can talk about digital transformation of the arts sector till we're blue in the face, but if we have no structured metadata that is linked, we're not getting very far. We're not going to be part of the 21st century.
Do you think your tool could be transferred to another cultural sector?
Oh, yes. You mean
audiovisual, music?
Yes. It's just that I come from a performing arts background, so I'm starting with events. So because my question to myself is, how do we leverage technology to get people to the live experience? I'm not interested in transferring the live experience to a digital format and then, presenting that in a local cinema, like Metropolitan Opera does. So that's just not my interest, personal interest. How do we use technology to get people to the live experience? We haven't even done that baseline. So it's like cover the basics first before we start, thinking about new ways to rethink how the performing arts should be presented to the general public, or how, a presentation can be presented, or a creative presentation can be presented to the general public. No, how do we use tech to get people to sit in a live theater? Let's just do that. And yeah, that's my starting point, but it has applications in other sectors. Not just arts and culture, other events and other industries as well. But we see focusing in on performing arts and then seeing if we can transfer that to other countries.
That's very interesting. That's all the questions that I have, I think. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm just going to blab, so no. No.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
No questions?
I don't think so. Only maybe, the conference you went to in Ottawa, where you talked about the entail of...
Oh, the long tail. So the conference I went into Ottawa was there was concern. It was organized by Canadian Heritage, and it was co-hosted with the Canadian Commission for UNESCO, and they're concerned with the diversity of content in the digital age. So, and what came up in that sort of international meeting was the disappearance of the long tail. So the promise of the internet and the promise of the web, the promise of Tim Berners-Lee web internet, of a long tail, of finding everything you want on the internet, all being up there, is actually not what's really happening on the internet. Because algorithms are designed because algorithms that need to generate a form of income and profitability have recommendation systems that rise up the most popular or the most clickable or what people are looking at. Those algorithmic recommendation systems, because we're using technology, because it's a reinforcing feedback loop that gets faster and faster the more it's used, is actually creating the opposite effect where the long tail is disappearing, and in fact we're getting a more narrow band of content that we're actually consuming as a society because of this really quick spinning reinforcing feedback loop that is all about the most popular, making money, profitability, the most views. It's actually, we're turning in on ourselves and seeing less and less and less content. So how do we break out of that cycle? And breaking out of that cycle is because those algorithms are based on popularity, which is good for their bottom line. So what came out of that international meeting is the awareness that there'll need to be in society alternative types of algorithms that are based not on making money, not on a business model, that will have to be based on diversity, that will have to be based on what's best for society to see. And those alternative algorithms or those alternative platforms don't exist today. So the platforms that we're all using, Google's there to make money. Netflix is there to make money. So Netflix's content that they produce is going to rise up to the top. So we miss out a whole bunch of other things that we just don't see because we don't get past that, what's risen to the top. Because of this reinforcing feedback loop, and we're getting a narrow band of what we get to see, people's differences are now way more extreme because you're in this camp, you're in this camp. So the concern also is, all the idea of and the notions of fake news, the really deep polarities and the chasms that are between people in society. People say this and people say that, and there's just really very little conversation, but there's no long tail. It's diminishing. That's what I got out of that international meeting. Netflix and Google were there too. So was YouTube, so was Twitter. I think Facebook was there for a day, briefly, an afternoon, and then left. That's what I got out of the meeting. But it's a complex. It's going to be it's a tough thing.